as we're hearing, Michael Gove has reportedly rejected the post of Brexit Secretary. That's obviously turned up the pressure on Theresa May. Where do things stand now?
Well, it's a really good question. We actually haven't seen or indeed heard from Michael Gove, who's the current British Environment Secretary, in the last day or so, really since this crisis began. All we do know is that in the cabinet meeting on Wednesday night, he was one of the more vocal supporters of Theresa May's deal. Maybe one of the reasons that yesterday it was reported that he had been offered this job of Brexit Secretary, trying to replace Dominic Raab. What is interesting about Michael Gove, though, that he's not just any cabinet minister. He is and was a leading Brexiteer. During the referendum campaign, he was one of the faces of the campaign here in the United Kingdom. And essentially, Isabel, he's one of the few cabinet ministers who would have the authority and the political, I suppose, reputation amongst Brexiteers to take on that challenge of being Brexit Secretary. It would certainly be a big coup for Theresa May if he were to take up the job. But as you say, the suggestions of this morning is that he is not going to do that, not least of all because he's made it clear that he would only take that job in the event of being able to renegotiate the deal with the European Union. Theresa May has made it clear that this is the only deal. It is not up to renegotiation. And so in those circumstances, in fact, Michael Gove might actually resign from the cabinet. That would be another significant blow for the Prime Minister. It might even potentially, people are suggesting, prove fatal for her premiership, such as the reputation of Mr. Gove.
Well, yeah, but there's also other damning blows. For example, the DUP has said that the Brexit deal is dead unless May is replaced, and then also hearing reportedly will be reportedly replaced. And we're also hearing that there's been more letters sent, low confidence letters sent to the 1922 committee. Darren.
Yes, but the reason this is so difficult for Theresa May is that she has ultimately got no majority. Even with the supply and confidence deal, which she has with the Democratic Unionist Party, that Northern Irish party, only 7 votes. The changes of 7 MPs' votes would mean that she would face defeat. That is why the DUP, with their 10 MPs, essentially all but saying that the supply and confidence deal is now dead between them and the Conservative Party unless they change the Prime Minister, unless they change the leader of the party, is so crucial. So yes, pressure on that end. Second of all, pressure, as you say, from her own backbenchers within the Conservative Party. Again, continued suggestions that they will reach this magic number of 48 MPs, 15% of the parliamentary party, calling for a leadership challenge. That would prompt that challenge. By all suggestions, Number 10 are saying that they would face up to it, that Theresa May would be prepared to do that. And the suggestion is, even if she did stand, she would probably win the vote of confidence because, of course, they would need a majority of MPs to try and defeat her. And that is why we're seeing this strategy, Isabel. Despite the cabinet resignations, despite the DUP's protests, despite the backbench rebellion, Theresa May is now trying to appeal to the nation. She's trying to go over the head of her MPs. She's trying to talk to voters, to the British public, and tell them that ultimately the choice they face is to have this deal, which is her deal, no deal, or remaining inside the European Union. She's going to appear on a commercial radio station later on this morning, take phone calls from the general public. It'll be interesting. It's not her natural habitat. She's not terribly good with relating to the average British voter. But this is where Downing Street now feel that the battle has to be, because they feel that things are really, really difficult inside Parliament. So they're trying to essentially say that Theresa May is acting in the national interest, not necessarily what in her party interest or indeed what her party wants.
Well, exactly then, Darren, where would you say that this Brexit deal now stands? You know, does it have legs? Is it viable still?
Is it viable? I'd have to say, if it's on life support, Isabel, I think the life support machine might be about to be turned off. Not least of all because even though Theresa May is now digging in, and we are definitely seeing her perseverance, you know, this lady is not for turning on this issue of her deal. The fundamental problem is that you cannot get away from the basis that most MPs in there, the people who need to vote on this, simply are not sold on that deal. And whatever Theresa May does now, I cannot see how that is going to change. So she can stay in Downing Street for as long as she wants. She can has many press conferences and talk to the British public. But so many MPs, both on her own side and in opposition, came out yesterday saying that they cannot support this deal. I do not see, even by just remaining in power, how she can force this through. And if that is the case, many would say, why is she still in Downing Street if ultimately her deal, what her premiership hinges on, is essentially all but dead?
Yeah, so Theresa May under fire from all sides. Well, Darren McCaffrey standing outside there in Westminster, thanks so much. Shona Murray in Brussels. Well, Shona, we're seeing the drama and chaos in London. How's this being viewed from Brussels?
Well, there was a very strong expectation that there would be a slew of resignations after this deal was announced the other night. So the only thing European officials, member states can do is actually just wait and see how it plays out, essentially to see if Theresa May will remain Prime Minister of the UK, and then that will be their partner with whom that they'll negotiate further. At the moment, the planning is going ahead for this summit on the 25th of November. The Sherpas are ready to come here next Thursday to finalise this withdrawal agreement. On Tuesday, the preparations are underway to publish the full declaration, the declaration of the future relationship, and that will be an even more advanced version of what's in the withdrawal agreement. It'll detail things like foreign policy, security, cooperation, and a trade deal. Obviously, at the same time, there's planning for a no-deal Brexit, because that is also could be where we're heading. Everybody understands that this was a very difficult position for Theresa May to be put in because of the nature of Brexit and the complexities involved, specifically because of the commitment the UK has to the Good Friday Agreement and the obligations to that. But we heard actually very interestingly from Donald Tusk yesterday, and he said that they're better prepared for no Brexit. Officially and very openly, all sides in the UK, in the EU, have been saying that no Brexit is actually their preferred scenario. The second scenario is for the UK to remain in the single market and the customs union. And then their third scenario is this deal that was agreed. And as we heard from Angela Merkel and various other people I've spoken to yesterday, there is no room to manoeuvre. This deal that was negotiated is the one on the table. And negotiators walked away with the belief that this was what was going to be put to the British Parliament, to British Cabinet, and that Theresa May could get it over the line. So they just have to wait and see if she can be true to her word at this point.
Well, you say that there's no room to manoeuvre. So what happens to this summit that's due Sunday next week? Is there a chance that it might be called off?
At the moment, and I spoke to very senior people late last night, and they said that it still stands. Because, of course, they can't make any decisions based on the domestic situation in the UK, because it's not any of the EU's business to do so. As we speak, Theresa May is the Prime Minister of the UK, and the decision by the Cabinet still stands to press ahead with this deal. So therefore, the preparations for that 25th November summit have to continue apace unless and until something dramatic changes over the next few days, if the numbers change, if Theresa May is forced to resign. But I also heard that people were quite impressed with her robust performance in the House of Commons yesterday and that press conference she did last night, where she vowed to plough ahead and that she understood, obviously there were concerns from all sides. She even admitted that this isn't the perfect deal for her, but it was the best given the complexities, given the obligations, given the fact that moving too far away from the single market and the customs union could harm the British economy, and at the same time they had to maintain the territorial integrity of the United Kingdom. So it was a difficult situation. Right now, all planning is underway. Like I said, no deal planning. The planning for the November 25th summit. I don't think that's going to be called off at this point anyway.
Looking into the fine print of the deal, what are the key points and what's making the EU happy and Brexiters enraged? Here's a breakdown. The text doesn't say customs union, but the UK would be part of a single customs territory until the end of the transition period on December the 31st, 2020. Britain will remain in a customs union with the EU indefinitely if a new trade agreement is not reached in that time. This measure was agreed to avoid a hard border in Ireland under the so-called Irish backstop provision. The arrangement would see Northern Ireland being part of the same customs territory as the rest of the UK and the EU. A sticking point for Brexiters, the UK can't withdraw from the backstop unilaterally. Instead, an independent arbitration panel consisting of 5 people, 2 from the UK, 2 from the EU and 1 independent person, will judge if and when the backstop can come to an end. Once the UK officially leaves the EU on March 29, 2019, both sides have agreed that Britain will enter into a transition period where it will be in a single customs territory with the EU. The document doesn't give a specific final date, literally stating only that it will end by 20XX. EU citizens living in the UK and Britons living in the EU will retain their rights and be able to have their family live with them, but will need to apply formally to remain in the country. Freedom of movement will end after the transition period and be replaced by a skills-based immigration system. There will also be visa-free travel for all short-term trips to the continent. And EU members pushed for access to British coastal waters in return for agreeing to a UK-wide single customs territory. The text sets out an aim to establish a new fisheries agreement on access to waters and quota shares for future fishing opportunities after the transition period.